Yes, sir.
Hello, hello.
I'm going to use this tonight. Every time I like something you say, I'm gonna hit the my favorite tool.
Get ready to use it a lot, buddy.
There may be some insinuations in there that are not so G rated, but this platform is G rated. Welcome everyone to tonight's webinar, hosted by myself, Bryce Wylde, and Justin Harris of the DNA Company. This is about manning up, right? Getting health checked, making sure you know your DNA, adding years to your life. We like to call this healthy years to your life, obviously. So this Man Up series, our mission, of course, is to empower all you guys out there and gals, especially those that are taking care of a guy with the latest health technologies and health solutions and alternative therapies. I should just say, though, before we start this, as is always the case, all of this information is for educational purposes only. Don't start any new regime, medicine, nutraceutical, supplement, or healthcare routine before you speak to your doctor or pharmacist or primary healthcare physician. And hey, Justin, excuse the voice. As I normally tell my patients, it's not whether you get sick, and I've had the run in with this uh, either RSV or I was negative for COVID. Who knows? Who cares what it was? But it's not whether you get ill. Everyone gets sick. I got hit. It's the speed at which you recover. So thankfully, I'm recovering very quickly. But nonetheless, I've got a bit of that horse in my throat, and my voice is a little off tonight. So bear with me. We always start this off with what's exciting us, right? Like particularly for guys' health, and we keep our finger on the pulse as it relates to what's out there in the news, in the media flow, and we are suckers for research and science. We geek out. We share all kinds of texts and emails on the daily. What's hit your radar? What do you, before we get into our toolkit for guys, what's on your radar for sort of like the latest, coolest thing that's out there right now?
Yeah, you know what? There's something on my mind, Bryce, and there's something that I want to say, and it's not really to do with technopoly and all these things that we're going to talk about today, but it's more of a cultural thing that I think is actually impacting men's health on the psychological level. And
Okay.
it's a little bit controversial. People might not want to talk about it, but it's this concept of toxic masculinity and what the media says it is versus what I think it actually is in actuality. And it's been on my mind a lot, because there's this picture being painted that traditional masculinity, right? I like to lift weights, I like to watch the UFC, these kinds of things, is in fact toxic in some way, shape, or form. And honestly, males are inherently dangerous, all of us. But what's truly toxic is a man who operates with no honor, a man who operates with no integrity. That's what's toxic. There is toxic males. Go ahead, drill it, because there is such thing as toxicity in the male, spectrum. But it's not what they say it is. It's not being masculine. There's nothing toxic about your masculinity. Stop it. This is healthy. It's okay if you like to lift weights. It's okay if you like to throw the football around with your buddies. You're only toxic if you're an ass, right? You're only toxic if you don't have any integrity, any honor. And I just wanted to give that to you guys because we're being talked down to by Hollywood and by different things, and it's not okay. What do you think
Agree
about
with
that,
you
Bryce?
more. I do, however, feel sorry for your Twitter feed after tonight's webinar, because that is quite the polar topic. I'm going to go so far off from any sort of political bent, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to revive. My wife would be happy about this because she's a dentist. Um, but there's a lot more research coming up around the idea of keeping a good oral health care, preventing periodontitis, gum inflammation, dysbiosis. We heard a lot about the gut brain connection, but this new connection, really important for guys, statistically a little more predisposed. The gut brain connection, the oral microbiome and cognitive health is definitely there. We're hearing more about it, but the mouth and the heart are connected. So this might actually segue into our topic today because it is kind of a tool I think should be in men's toolboxes, but really in all people's toolboxes. And it's this little guy here, little pick flosser, right? This is in my car. It's in my drawer here, desk side, of course, in the washroom. But whether you're a conventional flosser or like me, one of these pick flossers, making sure that you floss every single day is going to prevent your heart from getting sick. So I want to drive this home. There's a really good literature around this, the bacterial bridge connection. So the bacteria that live on the gunk between your teeth that you don't necessarily fully get rid of when you brush your teeth is the same bacteria that can cause disease in the heart. There's the inflammation connection. We always talk about that at the DNA company. A lot of our tests, 360 test that we run, gives direct association, the genetics involved in this disease process, the whole inflammatory connection. So the methylation genes, the detox pathway genes, et cetera. And then lastly, this sort of tale of two diseases, if this Hyogens bacteria does exist in your mouth and or you have some imbalance in oral cavity bacteria, that you can't fully brush out of your mouth, the only way to get rid of it is flossing. So that's mine. That's my what's hot oral health as it relates to cardiovascular disease. And us guys, we've got to be real careful about our ticker. So that's what's been on my mind. But I love your point around male toxicity. Unfortunately, the reality is from an environmental toxicity perspective, we're being hit real hard, whether it's from pharmacologics, plastics, so industrial toxins and so forth. Our genes, our DNA from an XY chromosomal perspective, really hard are we being hit insofar as estrogenization goes. So this may be actually a lot more than the political perspective that you present. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think toxicity comes in a lot of forms, right? There's toxic mindsets, there's toxic relationships, on and on. Toxins in your mouth, as you just alluded to, right? So it's this uphill battle that we're presented with these days. I think that media can be toxic. I think it can be nourishing. There's kind of a spectrum to it all. But the cumulative toxicity that we have to deal with now, with all these different things together, I think is why we have such an uphill battle, which is why we're going to talk about the toolkit today, because these are just little things and tactics that we use to kind of navigate that uphill battle and maybe make the incline a little bit less. So that's a good segue into kind of the different tactics we'll be talking about today.
Absolutely. Okay, so upgrading your health toolbox. We all have a toolbox. We all have our go-tos, whether they are, acute care remedies, or they are, preventive routines such as the flossing, or maybe they're, to bulk up, get better response out of the gym, one of your areas of expertise. We're talking about it all. Why don't you kick it off? As it pertains to the tool you'd like guys to know about, anyone who's joining us to know about the tool, how it relates in each instance. We're going to talk about this to our genetic code. And then also I might bring up how we might get tested live with our family doctor and or through simple blood or urine or saliva workup to determine the intervention and how we might see this improve over time. So what do you have for us first, Justin?
Yeah, so I'm actually on a personal mission this year. I decided that I'm really going to try to improve my sleep this year. That's a decision I made because, as many of you may have, let's call it a type A personality, right? That grinder mindset. You want to get up, you want to train, you want to work. We love the work, right? The work instills the worth. As men, we love to work. It's something we do. But there's this balancing act, right? And there's a downside to being too type A all the time. And I must say, I am guilty of that. I don't sleep so good. A lot of the times I don't. And so I just decided this is one of my Achilles heels. I can continue to be mentally strong and push through anyways, but let's work on it. It's a weak point, so let's reinforce the weak point. So I'm looking at all the tools and tactics and things. I do have a suboptimal clock gene, which many of you may share. So that makes it really hard to adapt to a circadian rhythm. So I'm looking at all these things I can do. And I decided first and foremost to get really serious about my Aura Ring, track each thing that I'm doing, because now any intervention I add in, be it red light glasses, be it, a supplement like Qualia Night, for example, high dosed CBD, whatever I may do from here, I wanted to get a baseline first so that I can track it. Anything that I add in from now on, I'll have numbers and things that I can relate back to. So Aura Ring is pretty friggin' cool. It's affordable. You wear it. It has a really low Wi-Fi emission as well, which is great. And it's different than the Fitbit because you can actually turn the ring itself onto airplane mode. And that's always been one of my things with these wearables that help you sleep, quote unquote, but they either have blue light, right, just projecting from them, or they emit tons and tons of non-native EMF. So this is great. You can turn it on airplane mode. It keeps track of all of your metrics, HRV, body temperature. And then the next day, it doesn't connect to the app until you turn it back off of airplane mode. So now every morning I just wake up and I check the percentage that it gives me. And I'm like, I can see exactly where I woke up when I was in deep versus REM versus light sleep as well. So it's been a pretty cool experiment, and I recommend it if you have any kind of sleep issues, which is going to ruin testosterone, right? Your cortisol is going to be up, harder time putting on muscle, all these things. Get a way to check it, right? Get some real metrics that you can work with.
Absolutely. It's not just about the hours you clock on the pillow, folks. It's about the depth, as Justin's alluding to, and the quality of that sleep. So, quick review of sleep anatomy. There are 4 stages to sleep. Before you hit what's otherwise known as REM, rapid eye movement, where inside your behind your eyelids, your eyes are going bonkers, moving back and forth, which is actually the lightest phase of sleep. Most people think that's the deepest phase. You're dreaming, but you get through these stages, essentially go very specifically through these different brain waves into deep 3 and 4, bounce up into REM stage 5, and you do that many times over the night. And if you do the quick math, it really should happen at least 5 times, and each through phase or the completion of that sleep architecture takes about 90 minutes. So you do that math, and that's where we get the 7 to 8 hours on our radar that we got to complete every night. The problem is we don't, even if we get those 7 to 8 hours, take that deep restful sleep. So at the DNA company, we look at your sleep genes. There's no question sleep hygiene is involved. And that is keeping a cool, dark environment, and not seeing that blue light, as Justin's alluding to, obviously, before sleep, keeping a comfortable room, dark, maybe some white noise. But still, people have a problem. That's the clock gene. That's the 5-HTTLPR. There's the TPH2. If you decide to get your DNA tested and understand where your Achilles heel is apropos the sleep architecture, you're smart. That's where it should start. And then we're sticklers for science. So I'm going to share with you how I would then determine how something like tracking with the Oura Ring might actually simultaneously show some improvement in your biochemistry. So I'm going to share my screen here. This is real simple. You can ask your physician, naturopath, one of our clinicians, because of course you have your reports, you want some further insight. We offer a lot of counseling and options for various packages to go through this information with you, your DNA. So one of our clinicians might recommend this as well, but this is neurotransmitter testing. One of the genes we look at plays a very specific role to serotonin, which controls sleep-wake cycle and mood, behavior, et cetera. And we look at others that control, day-night cycle or circadian rhythm. But tracking these guys and determining what your baseline is for serotonin, dopamine, some of these neurotransmitters before and after appropriating excellent sleep hygiene is to know that what you've done, the intervention, is working. So whenever it's a possible recommendation, we like to make it. In this case, urinary neurotransmitters vis-a-vis your sleep genes that we've discovered for you, or maybe you're about to discover in your DNA report. And then the intervention, using an Oura Ring to track, or in some instances, we might use tryptophan, 5-hydroxytryptophan. If you have problems with methylation, we like to use the right folate and B12, which are hugely important in those enzymes that convert tryptophan into 5-hydroxytryptophan, into serotonin, into melatonin at night. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense to everybody out there. Want to hear your feedback here as well tonight. Anyone who's got questions at the top of the hour at 7 o'clock, we're going to invite you to post them in the question and answer area here. We will get to them. We might bring you live to share your comment if you stick around to the end, and have you actually explain to everyone what you're thinking and get your voice. Here's my first tool. Ready?
Ready.
You know what this is? I know you know what this is.
Actually, I don't know what that is.
It's a weird looking one, which is maybe why it's not immediately intuitive to you. It's a grip dynamometer, dynamometer,
Okay, so
dynamometer,
it's a grip strength tester.
grip
Yeah.
strength analysis, right? So if really what we're talking about here, and this is really what we're talking about, is adding tools to your toolkit that substantially and evidence-based analyze and track progress to add healthy years to your life, I can't think of a better one that anyone can afford, Amazon at home, that actually tracks overall muscle mass consistency, therefore not wasting your muscle. We do these studies at the DNA company for hormonal variances within individuals. If you are a male, particularly more predisposed to estrogen dominance, you will lose muscle mass over time as you age faster than one who is more sort of androgen dominance. We look at those patterns. Point is, there's a lot you can do about it, including exercise, obviously, weight bearing, one of your areas of expertise, of course, Justin. But there are normal levels. So if this is on, and I'm not holding it the way I really should, but just to show the camera, and I take one hard squeeze as hard as I possibly can, that shows a 59. And then I go and I'll share my screen here. There are normal levels. There are levels of which, by age appropriation and gender, we should all achieve. It turns out mine aren't so bad. If I could actually find here where we are. At age 45 to 49, so I'm 48, I should, to be very strong and maintain my muscle mass, be higher than 54. And as I just showed you, I achieved a 59 without too much strength effort. So the point is, adding healthy years to your life by maintaining muscle mass. And by the way, one of my expertise is, of course, nutraceuticals, ingredients. I know nothing better than the science around HMB. You and I in a previous pod or webinar talked about this. Beta hydroxy beta methyl butyrate to add to your daily routine. Excellent research around that plus vitamin D to prevent sarcopenia, which is muscle mass loss over time. How else can we prevent that, though, Justin, in terms of what we look at the DNA company and appropriating exercise routines vis-a-vis, our muscle mass prediction?
Yeah, so there's so many moving parts to it, right? Because there's this this homeostatic component to it. When are we catabolic? When are we anabolic? We have to be both, right? People say the word catabolic and we try to say, we need to avoid that. The truth of the matter is catabolic activity is in fact what rips down that muscle tissue in the first place. It's kind of interesting with that, the grip strength. What did you call that? The grammanometer?
Dynamometer.
Dynamometer. So I've
Correlated so
actually,
well, correlated directly to overall muscle mass and strength and longevity.
yeah. And that's also an indicator, by the way, of overtraining. If you have weak grip strength, it's like if your resting heart rate is elevated or you have weak grip strength that day, it's actually a pretty good little signifier that maybe your nervous system is a little bit taxed, right? If let's say your grip is way worse today than it normally is, maybe your nervous system is still a little bit cooked there. So it's this balance, right? We need to know about your anabolic hormone pathways, being DHT. We need to know about general nervous system fatigue via your SOD2 pathways, right? Are you overtrained? Are you able to even weightlift in the first place? These are all the kind of genetic components that we look at. So there's actually detox components, there's hormone components to it. Beyond that, I mean, there's a number of things you can look at, including HRV, right? To know if your body's too catabolic to where maybe today's a rest day, or if you're just good to go, So we want to break it down. We want to rebuild it via sleep, via nutrition, things like HMB, other essential amino acids, right? Those are all great builders. So we want to bear in mind there's lots to it.
Okay, so a guy out there, or even a gal who's looking to support their guy, you're a genomic expert, clinician with the DNA company. Guys out there, they're looking to put muscle mass on. They don't know yet, but maybe they're estrogenized, like I am. I'm an estrogen dominant male. It's harder for me to gain muscle mass, keep it on. Got to pay attention to this and my grip strength throughout my life to add healthy years.
Yeah.
So I have my DNA, or maybe I don't yet, but I've done my test, or I haven't yet. But I get to the point where I now want a structured routine on how to best build this muscle mass among so many other things. What does this look like? Like, what are the programs like to get in front of somebody like you, an expert at the DNA company, and formulate a workout routine, diet supplement routine that's going to make sure that I do put on and maintain muscle mass?
Yeah, so we have so many different options, right? We have different programs, and each one is kind of tiered, right? So the higher ticket programs, you get a lot of time with a clinician such as myself, and we can actually dive into like, how are you currently exercising? What are you currently eating? And we can take your genes and just kind of tailor it all toward anabolism and these different tactics. For example, the male hormone system operates on what we call the menstrual cycle, right? There's the menstrual cycle and then there's the menstrual cycle. So testosterone naturally peaks at different times of the day, being early in the morning and then again kind of in the evening. So if we were to do, let's say, compound weightlifting, right? And that's not necessarily bodybuilding, more there's more joints moving and maybe going in a heavier repetition range, you're going to be doubling and tripling up on the testosterone and the growth hormone factor there. So let's say you have a balanced hormone profile, you just don't make a heck of a lot of testosterone in the first place, or maybe you do, but too much of it goes towards estrogen. Well, we want to live a more androgen dominant lifestyle. Knowing that genetically, we can now tailor the way you work out. We can make sure that you're eating in such a way as to be in concordance with your genes as well, to build the most amount of muscle mass. And then it's a matter of understanding endocrine disruptors in the environment, right? Are you drinking out of plastic water bottles that have been sitting in the sun and leaching
Right.
all that into the water, right? Do you have toxic skincare products as opposed to natural skincare products? All of these little moving parts tip the scales toward estrogen. Or if you have way too much body fat, it can aromatize, right? So maybe we just need to lean you down first, and that'll start to tip the scales. So the programs are great because we're able to really dive as deep as humanly possible. It's not a 20-minute just call. It's 45 minutes with me sitting there going, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to avoid.
And not just once, multiple times, as long as it
Multiple.
takes, and personalized. It's N of one, you, the individual who needs the help, structured, to the point. This is you understanding intimately their playbook, their instruction manual, and they will get a program like literally nobody else on the planet, tailored to their specific needs. This, folks, is personalized medicine. It's the newest advent, of medicine at large. Okay, we've so many little tools that we want to add to folks' toolboxes. What's your next?
Yeah. So the next one that I wanted to go over is one that I am in love with, obsessed with. I use it daily, and it's actually three interventions in one. So there's this PEMF mat that I use, and the one I personally use is from a company called Higher Dose, and you may have seen them. They make like the sauna blankets and a few pretty cool products. The friggin' PEMF mat that they make is like 6 feet long. Like I can get my entire body on it. It's very skookum. It's probably like, I don't know, 40 pounds. Um, it's big enough that you can take a nap on it. It's big enough you could stretch, like you could do yoga on it. But it has three things in one. So it's actually got negative ions built right into it, which gives you that kind of grounding effect, right? It helps to kind of counteract inflammation in the body. Then it also heats up via infrared, right? So you're getting a ton of those other benefits to it as well. Then it's got four different settings of PEMF, and each one is associated with a different like brainwave, right? So I can actually choose like alpha setting versus theta setting versus delta setting. So if I want to fall asleep, I'm going to use the sleep settings. If I want to mimic a nap, which usually happens around theta kind of hovers your brain just above a state of sleep, but that's when your body does a lot of the detoxing and things. I'll set it to theta, and I'll shut it down for 20 minutes, 40 minutes. Typically I use the opportunity to either do a breath work session, or I might do a brain tap, which is a great device as well that I recommend. So you're getting this mimicking of an actual nap, and it's very restorative via three different pathways. PEMF mimics, natural frequencies of the earth as well, and it can really help to counteract inflammation. So all three of these things help with inflammation: the red light, and then the negative ions, and then the PEMF. All of them help with inflammation, which is huge for longevity. And it's also just relaxing. Midday, I can just shut it down and pretend I can take a nap with my type A personality when I can't actually take a nap.
Right. One thing I love about PEMF, pulsed electromagnetic frequency, is the research done around. I mean, this is out of NASA, right? I mean, the American Space Agency. You send a guy to outer space, they come back within 4 to 6 weeks, osteoporotic.
Hmm.
And so originally this was designed, as you know, to enhance osteoclastic, or bone reformation. And those studies also showed some positive side benefit around the microvascular status, or the 50% of the circulation that most of us forget about. So there's the heart and the big vessels that are pumped out of the heart, the aorta, the carotids, all these things most people are familiar with. But excuse me, when you get deep into the microvasculature, which is where the red blood cells carrying oxygen and nutrients and so forth connect to tissue, organs, that's where you want that transfer of all that information to occur efficiently. Some of us don't have optimal circulation, and we identify that in the DNA 360 analysis. Once you understand what your shear force is, controlled by nitric oxide and the NOS3 gene, once you know what your 9p21 variability is for the G association, your risk of cardiovascular disease, and so forth, the more likely you are going to be to pick up this kind of device and use it frequently, because what it's doing is enhancing flow. It's improving circulation at that micro vessel, which is again 50% of our circulation. And here's a little, I guess, stack, if you will, to the PEMF, in my opinion. Cardio Miracle. This stuff is an incredible multi ingredient supplement, which has been proven study after study to support the heart, cardiovascular system, do all kinds of things, but particularly load the system with the right amount of nitric oxide support, which acts as a vasodilatory effect to increase this microcirculation, among other things. And again, we test for this at the DNA company. But when you use Cardio Miracle on its own, or double down by using it before getting on a PEMF mat, boy, are you ever showing an increase in that microcirculation bed. You can Google this, PEMF microcirculation, and watch vessels under the microscope go from narrow and closed to all of a sudden opened up and blood flowing. So love it. I love PEMF. I love what it does to the cardiovascular system, bones, recovery, circulation, sleep, as you mentioned, all these different things. I'm going to throw in another curveball. This is my a little toolkit. This is actually something I've poker night at my place every 4 to 6 weeks or so. So I call the guys in, and I will line up a bar. I'll have a couple of bottles of our favorite scotch. Maybe my favorite red wine out. And I always remind the guys, listen, the deal after you do this. This is my place. You're not going anywhere until you blow over, or you blow under rather, on the device. So at the end of the day, they know a breathalyzer at the end, and none of them blow over. But I say all that because it dawned on me a few months ago, when we're talking about keeping a healthy liver, we're not talking about, just, the idea is the more you can avoid toxins, including alcohol, that's probably one of the best ways in which you can manage toxins or detoxification pathways. And a lot of us have problems. We know this with the DNA company. So many people have issues with their glutathionization and their detoxification gene. So when you're drinking, this is not the story of just drink responsibly. It's add a breathalyzer. This thing is like $30 on Amazon, to your kit, and monitor yourself, sneakily in the washroom, to not blow over in terms of get pulled over and the legal limit, but to never surpass 1/4 of your legal limit at any point in the night. And what I'm getting at is, at the point in which you're already 0.04%, that's liver toxic. So how about remaining 0.01%? And this little device will tell you that. And another sort of little hack, if you will, is that these things are starting to taste more and more real. So if you enjoy a Heineken, have a beer, but then spread it out with a 0%. So you have a real one, have a 0%, then have another real one, and then have a 0. So you spread this out, while at the same time, the little tool is, in the wash and blow. Make sure you never surpass that 0.01. 0.02 at the most. And again, particularly if our reports show that you are a GSTT1, GSTM1, or GSTP1 problematic. Does that make sense? I think that's pretty clear. So not just not blowing over. I mean, that's the best way to add years to your life, isn't it? To not blow over or not, be out there recklessly inebriated and driving, which is obviously terrible. And chances are high that you're going to hurt yourself or somebody else. So, but this is also helping your liver. So that's my little tidbit on that side of things. How about you? What else do you have for the toolkit?
Yeah, so I'll piggyback off that one really quick as well because so I'm actually sober. I haven't had a drink in probably a few years now. It'll actually be 4 years in April. So there you go. It's been quite some time. But what I do as an alternative is I create mocktails, right? There's other ingredients that I like to add in that if you do it right, can still have some of those kind of social lubricating effects and make it so that you're still sipping on something, but there's no actual toxicity involved, nor is there inebriation involved, right? So you're kind of elevated, you're a little bit more loose and talkative, but you're not actually inebriated. And one of the ingredients I use comes with a literal shot glass, right? So that's ketone IQ. I actually use ketone esters, and maybe I'll mix it with like a Zevia or a carbonated coconut water or something like that. It actually tastes like vodka. Funny enough, it is rocket fuel. Like ketones don't taste good, but I prefer that because it actually kind of mimics alcohol that much closer. So I might, add it into a base of coconut water or something, some ketones, and then I might add some kava in there, right? Like kava is a great alternative. It's got some nootropic effects. In Hawaii, they actually have certain places where there's more kava bars than there is alcohol bars because people prefer the buzz. There's less. There you go. Kavaplex. Beautiful. Yeah. True Kava is that company. It's a great company. There's another one called Feel Free that actually adds kava and kratom together, which kratom is a whole nother animal. It does bind to the opioid receptors, but if you get pure kratom, it doesn't have a high toxicity amount either. So I might blend in some nootropics, right? I might take a big dose of CBD with some nootropics, with some ketones, and kind of have fun with it. It allows me to stay healthy, and I'm actually protecting my brain. I'm protecting my liver in all these ways, but I'm still social, and I'm not just the odd man out all the time. So that's a great alternative. I just wanted to piggyback on that. But the other thing I wanted to mention was, in fact, red light therapy. So like I mentioned, that mat that I have does have some far infrared built right into it. I also use just full on, devices. There's actually one behind me there, other side, inside of my sauna. I've got like a full body red light tool. You mentioned nitric oxide earlier, Bryce, and that's one of the touted benefits of red light therapy. So it's increasing circulation. You can actually spot reduce areas as well. So let's say you tweak your shoulder or something in the gym, you can just point the red light right at the area that got injured and accelerate the healing process. It's good for collagen production, right? So it's good for your skin. I'm paranoid about going bald, right? So I point it right at my scalp, and it increases circulation to the follicles. It can increase testosterone, circulation. I mean, the list goes on and on. For one tool to have that many benefits, I mean, I must say, I'm definitely a big fan, and especially if you have suboptimal nitric oxide genes, being NOS3 or the 9p21. It's great. We need to upregulate that, and it's just like you said, you could take something like Cardio Miracle and then do some red light therapy and double up on those benefits as well. I happen to live in Canada, and I must say the ability to turn the sunshine on with a button has also proven to have some protection for me personally against seasonal affective disorder. So I think that for one tool to do that much, it's a great one to add into the toolkit.
I love it. I love it. And I love whenever we can talk about stacking, because this is the way people start to learn, and, the complement between this technology and this particular ingredient or this lab. And again, if we're really reviewing how one is detoxifying at any given point in time, one of my favorite tests, which understands quite intimately phase 1 and 2. So again, you have your genetics, and maybe you have a poor glutathinization pathway. We look at the copy number variance there, and most, efficient and most accurate way of any other lab testing company for genomics out there. And then you're doing all you can do to manage your exogenous toxin exposure, but to keep a finger on the pulse. One of my favorite micronutrient, amino acid, toxicity for heavy metals, and what your liver is doing at any given time tests is by what's called a Genova Diagnostics called Nutrival, Nutreval. Blood and urine, not the cheapest test out there for sure, hundreds of dollars, but worth every penny to understand how you are detoxing at any given moment in time, given, of course, you have the genetic challenges. So, red light, I would add to that far infrared, of course, was what you're talking about, but I would add to that close and also saunas. I think the sauna discussion in context as well here as it relates to detoxification is an important one. So the research around, near infrared causing a deep sweat without the transient or ambient heat around us. So most of the information that we're, leveraging when it comes to saunas comes from hot rock saunas and steam saunas, right? Norway and some of those parts of the world where these things are done. There's like a 1.5 per human. So 1.5 saunas per human over there. They're doing it regularly and get great results. So they're known as the happiest population on the planet. And yet they don't live anywhere where there's much sun. So go figure, it's the saunas that are doing this. But when we're talking about somebody who's got toxicity issues and or genes that predispose them to poor toxin clearance, a sauna is going to help them. And regular use of that sauna. It's going to improve sleep, by the way. It's going to improve circulation. Regular sauna use, especially more recently, the research seems very clear that in combination with exercise is going to translate to better metabolism, cardiovascular health. The list is very long, but the caveat is this: when you're choosing a sauna, and of course, what we're talking about is adding a sauna to your toolkit. When you're looking at an appropriate sauna and you have challenges, particularly with detoxification, I'd say this applies to anybody, regardless as your detox pathways or not. Choose a clean one. SaunaRay is a company. I personally use a SaunaRay sauna, balsa wood, local. So their, eco print or footprint is extremely low. No glues and adhesives. They put all this stuff together without toxins. You don't have to be sitting in there purposely looking to sweat to improve your genetics or your predispositions, and at the same time being exposed to toxic material. I've never understood that. There's so many. Do not get a product out of China. Get one that is known to be clean. There's a few out there, but I know none better than the SaunaRay. That's why I'm mentioning that SaunaRay. So, folks, if you don't, this is probably what we see as one of the most, I guess, the Achilles heel of the genomic report, the 360 that, if you haven't already had this test done, you got to get it done. If it's for nothing more than this, to know your potential for detoxification, because if it's poor, you need to do everything to enhance your ability to pee it out, poop it out, sweat it out, and breathe it out, because that is the only way you're going to add healthy years to your life. It is the underpinning of so much of what ails us, guys. And this goes way beyond just retoxifying. We have this colloquial fun kind of thing that we like to say, what's the point in detox unless you retox? Well, let me tell you, if your genes dictate lack of these copy number variations for the GST, the glutathionization, don't worry about retoxing. You can't even deal with the toxic load of your day-to-day living and breathing and eating. I promise you. So I want to do something about that. What else do we have? What do you got?
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that too quickly. I mean, obviously, I'm a fan of sauna. That's why there's a gigantic one behind me there. Sauna is great too because it's an opportunity to habit stack, right? Like you're going to be sitting in there for 30 minutes or whatever it is. So I, for example, have suboptimal BDNF, which you'll see in your mood and behavior profile if you share that. And heat exposure happens to improve BDNF. So why not double it up and do some breath work while I'm in there, which also improves BDNF, right? So there's ways to stack that. I also do dry skin brushing while I'm in there. I also have an estrogen dominance, such as you do, Bryce. So maybe some cellulite, if I were to put on a bunch of weight, could definitely be in my future. Let's go ahead and negate that. So I do things like dry skin brushing, and that increases lymphatic drainage. Then I start sweating. So we're tackling the different phases of detox there. So I love the sauna because I'm going to sit there for a half hour, so I might as well stack up a few W's while I'm at it. Um, my sauna does have the red light in there as well, like I mentioned. So there's actually a whole spectrum. I'm getting a bunch of different red light benefits. The only thing I say about things that improve mitochondrial function or improve energy production within the mitochondria is I recommend looking at your reports and understanding your SOD2 pathway, right? Because I happen to be suboptimal there as well. And anything that increases energy production will also increase reactive oxygen species production, free
Right.
radical production. So there can be a bit of a double-edged sword there. So if in your reports you find you're suboptimal in your antioxidative pathway, maybe add some hydrogen water right before you get in there. Maybe take some carbon 60, something to help counteract those ROSs, because that way we'll get more benefit and less downside. So those are always very useful. Um, a couple of the more simplistic devices that I use daily would be just some mobility stuff. Like I use an inversion table, which I swear by.
Mhm.
Literally, you strap your feet in and you just tip yourself upside down, and you can feel it. It audibly pops, right? Like my spine will literally decompress. Um, so I do that probably a couple times a day. If you sit a lot, on Zoom calls and things, your hip flexors are going to get tight. Your spine can compress a little bit, and you're simply using gravity to pull it apart. I don't know if that's something you've dabbled in, Bryce, or
Absolutely. Used to do it frequently until I had a lumbar pliff or a posterior lumbar interbody fusion. So I had spinal surgery due to a congenital issue. So after that, that's a contraindication. But that was the one thing that would relieve it all the time without fail. And it's the number one reason people go to their doctor is low back pain. So I know that stuff works. I no longer need it because it's all fused, my bones back there. But 100%, it was one of those go-tos when I had chronic low back pain that was due to what we basically a dislocation.
yeah, so it's good for that. It's also, if any of you out there are struggling with hair loss, like I mentioned, I'm paranoid about, you can actually, and this is a funny tactic that I picked up from my barber. When you're upside down, you can actually massage your scalp, right? Because all the blood flow is in your head at that point, right? So then you massage your scalp, and it actually really increases the circulation to the hair follicles, and apparently it's quite effective for at least staving off hair thinning. So that's another thing that you can do. Funny enough.
So I gotta add to that, and the guys out there will love this, and excellent studies to show support for this, good science around this. We use tocotrienols in our list of recommendations, particularly if we find that you're high risk for cardiovascular disease, or where the genes are higher risk for issue down the line for cardiovascular problems. So particularly indicated for 9p21, we'll use tocotrienols. This is the work of Dr. Chanda and Sen of Ohio State University, and the NIH, gave this project $25 million year over year. Look, a lot of money was spent because there was good evidence, showing basically reversal of post-stroke white matter lesions. Okay, I mean, when you're affecting that and creating new blood flow around these areas where there was stroke and now scar tissue, like this stuff's working. But the really cool side benefit that they were getting from tocotrienols was hair, male pattern baldness, hair regrowth. So I mean, I love that story. People can look this up. Tocotrienols.org. This is a derivative of vitamin E. There's 8 isomers, 4 of which are tocotrienols. The other 4 are tocopherols. But these 4 isomers have been shown for, to help with post-stroke, cardiovascular disease, keep that inflammation low, and regrow hair. Really good studies to show for hair, male pattern baldness regrowth. We hear a lot about, you know, uh, treatments using heat or red light. I've even got Dirk who's asking, since red light therapy rejuvenates the cells, increases performance of mitochondria, resolves inflammation, etc. Any danger in using red light therapy if you have cancer, tumors, or will the red light therapy also amplify cancer cells? Is there a similar concern with PEMF? So I want to answer this as segue into my next tool for our toolkit. There's no evidence to suggest, that these therapies are going to induce cancer. Although, once again, this is for information purposes only. Never start any of these before speaking to your healthcare provider and making sure it's safe for you. I guess theoretically, with solid tumors, you would imagine not wanting to increase circulation to those tumors. And there's no good evidence around what I'm about to say. So take it, as it's meant to be for educational purposes only, grain of salt, non-diagnostic, not for treatment. But I would suggest the more we can get natural killer cells, our innate frontline immune system, into the nooks and crannies of the body by increasing microcirculation, theoretically, we might actually be enhancing or augmenting the accessibility of our frontline immunity to these areas where they need to be acting more in our defense. So that's all, theoretical. I would at least say that these are class medical 2 devices, by the way, right? PMF devices for the most part. I don't know of any literature that suggests there's contraindication in the case of, cancers, leukemias, and so forth. But always do your due diligence. And I say that as segue because I don't think there's enough talk around cold lasers. I think cold lasers should be spoken about more. And they're not that cheap. They can range in price, but for pain management, for wound healing, for tissue repair and generation, very locally, these things, they're basically a photobiological reaction that's occurring, right? This is not just ice out of your ice chest or your freezer. These cold lasers emit a light that penetrates the skin without causing any damage. So this is absorbed by chromophores, or these light absorbing molecules within cells, particularly the mitochondria you alluded to earlier. And we look at mitochondrial function with the DNA 360 testing and educate folks on how to optimize that. One of the most important genes is that SOD2 gene, superoxide dismutase you spoke about earlier, manganese enzyme powered factor that ultimately helps protect the mitochondria. But this light that activates these chromophores, and again, particularly when the mitochondria, leads to changes in cell function. There's also a stimulatory effect, upregulation of ATP, a reduction of inflammation. Pain relief is the end point. So I think we talk a lot about heat. We hear about cold dunks, and not a lot of folks want to dive into cold or sit in cold baths for 5 or so minutes at a time at 42 degrees or 0. But I think people should know more about cold lasers. I think it's something that, guys may want to entertain, especially hardworking, physical, whether it's in the gym or it's actually, a labor of love, or your employment, a blue collar worker, or somebody who's active and physical all day with a resultant level of joint pain, and you want to enhance recovery. So I just want people to know that there is that option out there: accelerated tissue repair, and inflammation reduction using a cold laser. That's my tool.
Yeah, and it's cool because it sounds very targeted as opposed to just a
Mhm.
blatant cold dunk, right? Like you can kind of
Yep.
isolate an area more so than just the full body, which is great. And it's we need to be aware with things like cold immersion, heat immersion, all these things, is that these are hormetic stressors as well. And so we talked a little bit earlier about this balance between anabolic activity and catabolic activity. And we need to be aware that a lot of these interventions, if you're going to stack them all up in the same day, you're putting your body through a certain amount of stress as well, right? So we need to always make sure that we're balancing it out. Don't overdo the cold, don't overdo the heat, don't overfast, don't overexercise. All of these things are hormetic stressors, and we need to make sure that our body has that homeostasis at the end of the day to be healthy and to have longevity.
Absolutely. Do you have a tool in your toolkit for advice that actually works, particularly on that Goldilocks hormetic stress?
I would say that all the sleep hacks are the best way to go for that, because that's when you get this release of growth hormone. That's when your body makes its own deuterium depleted water, right? It's when we detox. So if you are out of balance, let's say you're very cortisol dominant, and your sleep sucks, it's going to remain cortisol dominant until you fix that. So that's where, the red light glasses and CBD and all these kind of things come into play. That's where the HRV metrics and stuff come into play as well, and even the grip strength, right? If we have something to measure it with, then we know. Let's say I wake up and my resting heart rate is 99. Well, I probably pushed it too hard the day before and then didn't get very good quality sleep, right? So now we need to work backwards from kind of what the issue is as well. So again, testing, know the genes, know what's happening in your body via things like Aura Ring, via things like grip tests. Then we know what the problem is and where it's most likely coming from. So then when you get enrolled in one of our programs, I can ask you 9,000 things about what your day looks like. And we can kind of pinpoint and go, let's switch this for that. Let's swap that for this. And hopefully we can rebalance out your nervous system.
Yep. No, well put. We talk a lot about BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, avoiding cognitive decline, dementias, into older age. Being old does not mean, calendar old does not mean we have to have a failing brain. I wrote my whole last book on this, Brain Spanners. The idea, though, is brain span, like health span, is you can live well into your hundreds, if you will, or 105, 110 with full cognitive ability. And we're learning more and more about this all the time. But we test for this at the DNA company, the 360 test. We have programs to help you with your brain span, and preventing and doing everything possible to counteract cognitive decline. But we look at BDNF, which we affectionately refer to as the fertilizer to the soil, if you will. And hormesis, coming full circle to these points, hormesis, or that Goldilocks amount of stressor, is often exactly what we need to do to upregulate the BDNF gene, which itself makes brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which again increases neuroplasticity, prevents cognitive decline, helps keep a good memory and brain ability about you. And so we talked about it. Infrared sauna, the right amount of heat, that's going to upregulate BDNF. We talked about cold laser. I think you briefly mentioned, well, maybe you didn't, but you mentioned circadian rhythm, but then there's the light boxes, right? SAD light. You don't have to have seasonal affective disorder, but the sun and even vitamin D derived from sun rays is going to help boost BDNF. Cold laser therapy, turns out, because it's a hormetic response the body achieves, also increases BDNF. But there's one tool. This is a very expensive tool, an at-home tool, but there are clinics you can go to get this done, this treatment done as well. But it's a tool for your toolbox to consider that's going to increase BDNF. It's going to improve circulation. We've been talking about that as a theme. It's going to improve mitochondrial function. It's going to improve detoxification. And it's going to improve overall proposed health and wellness, maybe even longevity. What is it? HBOT. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy. It's been used forever. We know about it because divers use it to prevent or treat the bends. You go too deep and come up too quickly, and there's potential for gas exchange or differential in gases, problems, and throwing thrombuses and all these different things for the acute sense. But I use this in my spinal surgery recovery. I can tell you this: the results are unbelievable as they pertain to recovery from infections, as they pertain to everything from chronic diseases, the fibromyalgias, the chronic fatigue syndromes, these weird diagnoses of exclusion, and infections. But HBOT, there couldn't be a better example of hormetic, perfect amount of stress, Goldilocks amount of stress to the body that's also going to upregulate brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So that's my next. And by the way, as we kind of come to the top of the hour here, I didn't want to forget to cover, a couple of nutraceutical tools to the proverbial toolbox. So within our programs at the DNA company, we've also recently launched a program called Black Label. And that's where we're able to not only understand your DNA from a very intimate, personalized perspective, but then to make recommendations in some instances for the very ingredients that you should be taking based on your DNA that quite theoretically wash over your genes, can't change your DNA. It is what it is, but you can manage genetic expression. That's what we're talking about here. But creating that U vitamin supplement at the right dose for you based on your DNA. And some of these ingredients are really powerful. I mentioned one already. We talked about tocotrienols. But I want to bring this up in context of some very popularized drugs that are out there right now. Particularly, we'll start real quick with the GLP-1 agonists, right? These drugs that are, Ozempic is one example, meant to help you lose all kinds of weight, and regulate blood sugar. Justin, start off though with what is the problem that we're seeing with a lot of these drugs, first off?
Well, first of all, drugs are drugs, right? So it's like having a bunch of different keyholes and it fits into one keyhole, but the same drug might also unlock some other disorder, or right. This is where we're in side effect land. So a lot of those agonists have other effects that are going to be worse off than you would be if you just controlled your calorie and taken different things. And really, it's working on the glucagon pathway, right? So it's messing around with your satiety signaling and things, which, by the way, there is genes that are strongly correlated to satiety signals like FTO and MC4R.
That we check.
Things to look at that we check, right? So you'll know if you're dysregulated there or not. But think of it this way: if you're going to take a pharmaceutical that's only going to suppress your appetite, effectively, is what that's doing. Understand that you're actually risking all of these side effects, some of which are very powerful. Look it up online, Ozempic side effects. You can get the same result if you just get on the right plan for you and know what your microbiome is doing, how your body actually digests different macronutrients via your TCF7L2, your ApoA2, your AME1. We can get to all of that with just looking at your genes. Your body likes this, your body doesn't like that. We can extrapolate and get you on the right diet. And it's not, I don't even like the word diet. This is just, I eat this, I don't eat that. Right. So I'm not a fan of taking a pharmaceutical to supplement something that we can actually achieve in a natural manner. So that's one of the issues. I would say that you can also use things like there's things like ketones, right, that actually do have appetite regulation effects. I mentioned them earlier. There's ways to suppress your appetite in a more natural way that doesn't have any side effects. So
Or
I
at
would
least
always
train the body into routine where it becomes accommodated, given your genetic profiling, and we're sensitive to, of course, that, but where it's able to better accommodate for a fastedness or exercising without a fastedness. Good for for not jumping right into this this topic that they're starting to prove out now, though, and what I thought you were going to start with, because all of what you said is even more important. The idea that you can manage this better without drugs, and that drugs open up these other potential issues. But you'll resonate immediately when I say this. I think the biggest problem that they're starting to see is you lose muscle mass. A large percentage of the weight lost in these trials now, looking back at these GLP-1 agonists, is muscle. Half of the topic of conversation, at least at the top, is what we talked about, is how do you prevent muscle mass and track your grip strength and see that, these are the things that you're doing: exercise, good sleep, excellent amount of protein, which, by the way, we both know the literature is now supporting more along the lines of 1 gram per pound of body weight versus half a gram per kilogram of body weight. Ridiculous. Anyways, all of these things in play, and then the right ingredients, right, that are also mixed in there. So if you have the FTO, or you've got the TCLF7L2 gene and disappropriation of blood sugar, etc., maybe we're going to put alpha lipoic acid in your formula. Maybe your detox genes are off, so we got to stimulate those a little bit and get some N-acetylcysteine and selenium in your formula. All these things to help these pathways work better. But there's one that I wanted to throw out there. I'll do it again. I've already talked about it. HMB, beta methyl hydroxybutyrate. Excellent research around just taking that and vitamin D together will help to prevent muscle loss. So if you're somebody, and here's my bottom line for the toolkit factor, that you're already taking a GLP-1 agonist, okay, it's actually indicated for some people. I think we have better measures, or equally good measures that complement, once we understand your DNA and you're involved in our programs, the consulting programs. But this may potential just as akin taking a statin drug to lower cholesterol. We all know that you need to be taking ubiquinol because you'll become deficient if you don't. I think this is akin to that. You need to take HMB if you're on a GLP-1 agonist like Ozempic. You just need to be taking that. And I would throw on top of that, maybe as a stack, peak ATP. So they've cracked the code around. We used to think, oh, you can't take ATP. Your digestive system will digest it. This is the currency of energy that our mitochondria make. You can get deficient in these too in these particular drugs. If you take disodium ATP, which is commercialized as peak ATP. So I don't care what the bottle you buy is. You can buy any bottle. You look on the label. If it says peak ATP, the studies are there to show that's actually going to increase your ATP. You're gonna have more energy, especially during exercise, to be able to put on and maintain that muscle mass along with the MyHMB. So before we start to take any other questions, if there are any final thoughts, any other tools to the toolbox that you want to add there, Justin?
Yeah, and I'll also just say I'm currently using HMB. I typically do it like 2-3 times a year. I'll do a cycle of it. I mean, I'm 32. I don't really need it for sarcopenia reasons, more so to be more in the plus. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll cycle it in for, let's say, 8 to 12 weeks, use it in concordance with a weight training program, and then I'll come back off of it just to accelerate my results. So it's a fun one to dabble in. It's a leucine metabolite that has pretty potent mTOR stimulating properties. So you're going to get more out of the work that you put in the gym in the first place. You're going to be a bit stronger and synthesize tissue at a greater rate. So I'm a fan of HMB. I'm going to add one more tool to the toolkit for the fun of it. Um, I think that vibration therapy is great for a lot of reasons, including circulation, nitric oxide. It also has a lymphatic drainage property to it as well. And I use one from a company called Life Pro, but there's a lot out there, right? Like Power Plate is a great one that's really popular. There's a one called Bulletproof Vibe. You can get all kinds of companies that do it. But I do like 10 minutes a day on it, and there's 3 different settings. So it shakes like this, it shakes like this, and then it shakes with like really minute ones. And the information out there about it is pretty solid as far as how it can increase fitness levels and just structural integrity and what have you. So I think that it helps you recover. I also think it helps you with actual performance. And then if you did it before a sauna, let's say, you get the additional lymphatic drainage. So in the morning, as I'm sipping my coffee down and I'm standing there doing alternate nostril breathing like a weirdo, I'm just vibing, man. And it's definitely going to increase your energy and all kinds of things for the day too. So I love that one.
I love that too. We're remiss a little bit because we didn't talk about, I don't think, any tools other than some that obviously enhance sleep and track sleep, but tools that ultimately help to decompress or stress. We talked a bit about HRV. That's pretty well known tracking methodology. Get into deep breathing and breathing in tune with heart rate variability so as to lower stress. And this is particularly if you are of the genetic variation that your COMT gene and your ADRA2B, 2 genes heavily in charge of executive function, mood, and behavior, cause you to be a little more on edge or hamster wheel, stressed, hard to fall asleep, stay asleep type person. So I want to throw this last tool of the toolbox in as it pertains to managing stress. So benefits on stress, mood, even digestive health through vagus nerve stimulation. I actually hate the word stimulation. I prefer regulation or modulation of the vagus nerve. We don't overstimulate. It's kind of like hormesis. We talked about like the perfect amount of stress. Anyway, they're cool. Besides what we can do through this deep breath and, maybe even Wim Hof method, or maybe even doing some sauna and or cold plunging, all these things are known to regulate. It's what we're doing, the vagus nerve, right? But there are cool devices out there that really all you need to do is for a couple of minutes, apply a device to the area where your vagus nerve comes from your brainstem out and then down sort of it's called the wandering nerve, goes into all your organs and so at the right amplitude. So this is also a medical class 2 medical device that's available out there called a True Vega. The True Vega nerve stimulator. I mean, talk about rich in science. Evidence around, by the way, initially, the lead researcher, this like dual PhD, came from the military, researcher, his name evades me right now. They did this on allergies when you can modulate immunity through vagus nerve stim and actually see somebody go from hyperallergenicity to normal or modulated. I mean, that's super cool. But you can use this before going to sleep at night. You can use it before a stressful business meeting. You can use it in advance of any stressful situation. And within minutes, you don't have to know how to breathe or meditate like a Buddhist monk. Within minutes of use, you are in parasympathetic state, or you've moved from that fight or flight to rest and digest where things are more relaxed. So I also wanted to throw that out there. Marissa is asking you what brand of Aura Ring you have. Well, that is the brand, isn't it? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the Aura Ring, it's actually spelled Oura, and it is in fact the brand itself, right? So there's a number of wearables, like I mentioned, Fitbit and different things. Aura Ring is its own company, so that's the one I recommend. They have different models, and they have an app, and it's like $8 a month or something like that. So when you order the ring, it's cool. They send you a sizing kit if you don't know your size, which I didn't, and then you just find your size, and then you order the ring that you want. They have different ones. This is the stealth black or something it's called, because of course I gotta look cool. And yeah, after that it's $8 a month, and the app actually gets smarter. Like, it gets to know your body better as you kind of tune into the rhythm. So it's like, you should be going to bed at this time versus that time. And as far as like a biohacking device that gives you like feedback on time daily, yeah, I think that it's one of the more valuable ones out there for sure. But it is in fact Aura itself.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. And there are other wearables that can track some of these things as well, but nothing that sort of comes, all in one like you described, and with as little. I think we need to be concerned about um, EMF. So we talked about PEMF, pulsed electromagnetic frequency, at the right frequencies that are healthy for you for microcirculation. But there is EMF, or electronic, smog, that's not so healthy, pumped out by a lot of these devices, including your smartphone. Should be off at night. Besides the blue light that comes from it, it's always pulsing. Sort of some of the negative variations of 5G and other things that are perhaps not good for us. Jury is out in some cases with that, but I think we're getting a clear picture. It's not good for you. But the Aura Ring doesn't do that, right? You're telling me, or you're telling us, that it really doesn't, need that level of, albeit non-ionizing radiation, but at a certain frequency that maybe not so good for us. It doesn't use that not good for us frequency, correct?
Correct. Yeah, and it only there's a certain period of time that it actually doesn't pulse at all. So it takes the reading and then it stops, and then it takes the reading and then it stops, and it's definitely one of those things that biohacking companies need to start paying attention to. Like there's even sleep mats and things out there that you plug in that have the Wi-Fi on all night, and it's saturating your body. And you're right that it's difficult to find real studies about what the actual harm is, because I do believe that there's a little bit of an effort to make it sound better than it is, but it has been classified as a type 2 carcinogen, I believe. That's where I'm, also a big fan of using in my toolkit things like the Lila Quantum, right? Things that actually help to kind of counteract Wi-Fi. PEMF also has some healing properties there. Hydrogen water can help with that. Grounding can help with that. So yeah, I mean, EMF, I mean, we could probably do a whole friggin' webinar just on that and the conversation there. But this one in particular, it emits very low, and then you can turn it right on airplane mode while you're sleeping as well. So that's really cool.
If people are interested in that, maybe we will. Actually, it's a good idea. Dr. Magda Havis, your Women's College Hospital here, doing some groundbreaking research around the effects of EMF in those individuals who are already sensitive. And there are certain genetic types. And I wouldn't say that we look for these. We don't have that direct correlation, but they are starting to kind of be weeded out. But individuals who are more likely to be sensitive to this non-ionizing radiation. And there's definitely something there. We're bioelectric beings. I mean, we respond to biology, chemistry, and electricity. You can't have a thought without that being the case. So there's definitely electricity involved in that. Electricity at sort of the microcurrent levels is interrupted by more than just ionizing radiation. So I think there's something there. We often get this question a lot too, and this might actually fit into the toolbox scenario. Um, but it also falls in line with this idea of, decompression, reducing stress, preparing for an excellent sleep, maybe even upregulating the DRD2 gene, which we look at, which is the dopamine receptor gene for reward, especially those individuals who are kind of hyper reward seekers, right? They're always looking for their next hit. One thing they have to do is get better at meditation, but they don't necessarily spend the time. So talked a little bit about that Zendo or the Vegas, True Vega device. But there's also some other cool stuff out there that uses technology called transcranial direct current stimulation. So this is like enhanced meditation. So you're sending waves. So speaking of good energy or good waves, you're sending waves through your prefrontal cortex in certain areas, the amygdala, stress response area in your brain, basically to through transcranial stimulation to downregulate that heightened sense of awareness or impending doom. So it enhances alpha wave. That's bottom line, alpha wave brain wave. And when you do that in combination with theanine, which is an amino acid, also been proven a few hundred human clinical trials to upregulate alpha wave brain activity, you're now a Buddhist monk, like in minutes. You don't have to know any of these crazy techniques. So you are enhancing that alpha wave. The more you do that, the more you're going to actually get into that deep, restful stage of eventual theta, delta, and then have that good REM and those good cycles. So I think, unless there's, someone's asking my thoughts or our thoughts rather on Beamer. What was your PEMF device of choice again?
That one's higher dose, but I have heard of
I,
Beamer and that it's high
well, I
quality.
was
Yeah.
going to say, I was going to say yours is higher dose. I happen to use Beamer. Um, Beamer, BEMER, is also a class medical, two device, medical class two device with excellent research behind it. All these are proprietary for the wavelengths they're signaling, right? But at the end of the day, a pulsed electromagnetic frequency signal, healthy ones that have been studied, is what you're looking for. So whether it's Beamer or the higher device, sorry, what did you call it again?
Higher dose.
Higher
Yeah.
dose, sorry, higher dose. I mean, listen, it's a consideration financially. In some cases, some of these things are super expensive, but they're worthy of investigation, especially if circulation is. See, here's how we'll tie this up. Ready? At the end of the day, how do you know what you need? How do you know what you need to take? How do you know what you need to do? How do you know what you need to focus on in terms of macronutrients and micronutrients? You need your own playbook. You need to understand what your instruction manual says. And then you need a guy like Justin to walk you through it. That's why we offer all these different programs. So first it's getting the 360 test. And then you move from there to, have some sessions, some hand holding around exactly what you need to do to set you up to add years to your life. And that's what we're talking about. Change the day you die. That's it. Bottom line. How do we do all of these things and add tools to our toolkit to modify, change, and enhance our health to change the day we die? Um, any final thoughts, Justin?
Yeah, it's exactly what you said. If you want to know what's going on in your body, look, right? We're at that place in science where we're able to actually look. This is not the 1800s where I have to take a chisel to your head to see what's going on in there, right? We can just blow into a device to see what the blood alcohol levels are. We can wear an Aura ring and see what my HRV was doing all through the night. We can spit into a tube, send it, and know everything about ourselves, our own personal playbook. We have this technology now. It would be crazy not to take advantage of it.
Right.
So know your genes, know all these different metrics about your body, your nervous system. How should your nutrition be, right? Get your microbiome tested. Understand what's going on in your body, because otherwise it's guesswork. And that's what mainstream medicine does. We're done with that. That's a thing of the past now. We're not going to just make these throwing spaghetti at a wall recommendations anymore. Let's personalize it. And the first step is, of course, to know what your genes are, what's going on in your body. So you got to get that done first.
Absolutely. We're going to end off with Richard's question, last question of the day. And here's how we'll end off the hardest possible question to ask. And I think I have the answer, but I'm going to do them one better. She said, if you had to prioritize three tools, which would you choose for longevity? We talked about so many tools tonight. The sauna, ray infrared sauna. True Vagus, True Vega nerve stimulation, transcranial direct current stimulation, muscle recoveries and cold laser, HRV. We didn't get into a bunch of stuff like reverse osmosis for water or HEPA filtration. Talked about HBOT, SAD lights, the Oura Ring, PEMF, all these different things. To choose three would be nearly impossible, especially, three of top choice to get to longevity. But I actually have the answer. And it's the tool that we need in order to identify the other tools. And here it is, bottom line. This summarizes everything. You need your 360 DNA analysis. That's going to inform you as to what your three tools are. Okay, Richard? I hope that drives it home. I hope everyone here enjoyed this tonight. TheDNACompany.com, 360 test. There's 10% off that we're offering right now. And you got to get yourself in front of Justin for a consultation if you're a guy looking to optimize hormone metabolism, energy, sleep, you name it. Justin, I'm going to see you back for our next time on this Man Up webinar, which is always fun, man. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of the week, brother.
Looking forward to it, man. Thanks everybody for coming. Man up.
Thanks, everybody.